Right now, we're going to talk a little bit about a subject. I don't know if we've talked about this on the radio, and that is the subject of infertility. It's National Infertility Week coming up very soon, and we have with us right now a couple that knows a lot about it, and Sue Johnston has written a couple of books as well and is involved in the first ever Walk of Hope, which is coming up. Sue, good morning. It's nice to have you here.
Good morning. It's a wonderful pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And your husband, Bob, is also with us. Good morning, Bob.
Yeah, good morning.
You guys drove over from Brighton this morning.
We sure did.
Yeah. Okay. So the first ever Walk of Hope. And when is National Infertility Week?
National Infertility Awareness Week starts on Sunday, Easter Sunday, and it goes through the 27th of April. So it's next week.
So very timely. I was reading up a little bit. I didn't realize that infertility affects 1 in 8 people.
1 in 8, yes. 1 in 8 people suffer from infertility, and 1 in 4 suffer from miscarriages.
Yeah, how do we define infertility?
Well, infertility is defined for a person or a couple who try to conceive for a year if they are under 35 years old.
Mm-hmm.
If they are over 35 years old and they suffer for 6 months, it's considered the time to seek some help.
And I take it that you had personal experience in this area.
Yes, we sure did.
You did?
We struggled for a decade of our lives to have our one and only son. We were one of the lucky ones, and I feel that we wanted to always give back to those who are continuing to struggle to build their families, because it can affect you to the core of your being.
Tell us how.
Well, I feel like for me, I'm an elementary school teacher, and I always wanted to, have children of my own. And I was the youngest of 4 children, and my mother, I used to always ask my mom for a baby brother or sister, and she said, well, when you grow up, you can have as many children as you want.
Mm-hmm.
And when I met my wonderful husband here, and we started trying, it just didn't happen for us. So I couldn't have as many children as I want. So that choice was taken away from me. And we had to go to high-tech infertility, like in vitro fertilization. I did 7 in vitros. Yes. So
that is very expensive.
Very expensive.
Very expensive.
Yes.
I mean, what, like $10,000 or something?
Yeah, 10 to 12, 15,000.
I think it was back then.
Yeah.
I think it's more expensive now. They do some more genetic testing that wasn't done when we did it. And one of the challenges that we have, it also puts a lot of stress on a marriage, because I was a naval officer. And part of my job is I drove ships, and so ships, you're not home a lot. And so trying to balance those two things, the career and career goals, and then family and personal goals and all that, was very stressful. And as Sue said, we were lucky enough to have one child, a son, who will be 25 in about a week and a half. And he actually was born on a Sunday before I took command of another ship on Friday.
Oh my goodness! So you had to schedule it between ships.
Almost, yes.
Well, and you use modern technology to make that happen.
We did in vitro fertilization. I had lots and lots of embryos, lots and lots of eggs. Everything looked picture perfect. I was unexplained infertility, so they could never find anything that was wrong with me nor my husband. And we just couldn't implant. But back, we keep saying back in the day, I still think that infertility is really in the new phases of exploration and discovery and whatnot. But I did this 25 years ago, and they put 6 embryos in the first time, and none of them implanted. 8 embryos the second time.
Wow.
None of them implanted. And they were embryos that they grade them. It's kind of funny to think they grade your eggs like, grade A, what have you. But I went to blastocyst, which would mean like these embryos divided as much as they possibly could, and they looked picture perfect before they put them back. And there were 6 embryos the 3rd time that we tried it, and the 4th time was our golden time when we finally did get pregnant. They put 3 embryos into my uterus and 2 embryos into my fallopian tube. So I don't know which one took, whether it was an IVF or a ZIFT baby at that time. So
Sounds like it's kind of, I don't know if invasive is the word, but definitely disruptive.
Oh.
It sounds like a tough deal.
it is a tough deal because, well, it's exorbitantly expensive, and it just drives your whole being. You don't have a chance to go on a vacation because you have to scrape every dollar together. Infertility is basically uncovered in most parts of the
Really?
country.
And,
Yeah.
and there's no guarantee.
And there's no guarantee.
Like you said, it took 6 times for you. We read. Well, I just read in the grocery store line the other day. Gwen Stefani and what's his name from the Boys.
Yes.
They're married. They've reportedly spent millions trying to do this and failed. Have not been able to have any success. Now, I think that report may have been debunked, but still, there are a lot of celebrities that make the news because they're trying to conceive and they are unable to, and they've tried every avenue. I guess, so we grow up hearing that, oh, you can have as many kids as you want, and then all of a sudden, when it doesn't work out, you start to see that, oh my goodness, this affects a lot of people, and this is...
The Obama's 2 kids were conceived by IVF.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
They
she
did.
just came out about
that. They did. Not too long ago, probably within the last year.
Yeah, within the past, I think this year.
So both of their kids were conceived by IVF, which, as you said, almost nobody knows.
When did they first do IVF?
Louise Brown was the very first
In
IVF
England, correct?
baby.
Right,
Yeah,
in
and that was in 1978.
Okay.
So
It's 40 years old, the technology.
yeah. And, I think 40, a lot of people think 40 years, that's a long time. But in the whole perspective of life, it's still in its infancy because they cannot figure out what makes an embryo implant. If they could get to that point where they could use some kind of super glue to make that little embryo stick in there, then there would be no more infertility. But it's just that getting that implant, that embryo to implant, can be very difficult.
You have a website that people can go to. It's kind of a way to get information and maybe get hooked up with a network of other people who are like-minded. Theinfertilityadvocate.com.
Yes.
All one big word, theinfertilityadvocate.com. I checked it out, and there was an article in there I thought was interesting. Myths.
Yes.
5 myths about infertility. One is stress causes infertility.
Yes. And that has been proven to be a myth. That is debunked. That is not true.
But as you said, infertility can cause stress.
Well, definitely, infertility can cause stress. And one of the thoughts is, if people who are stressed out cannot conceive, then why would people in war-torn countries be able to have a baby? Why would people who have been, unfortunately, violated can have babies? But if you...
Point well taken. If stress causes infertility, we would have 0 population growth in this country.
Right.
And by the way, this is a problem that affects every country, every nook and cranny of the globe. I mean, has there been any studies that show it's more prevalent in one area than another?
Not really. No, it it has no. It doesn't discriminate. Infertility doesn't discriminate. It's all ages of family building ages, I should say. It affects mostly the people that are in the reproductive years, but gender, race, socioeconomic background. It just it doesn't discriminate.
It affects women and men. It's probably, I don't know, half or 2/3, 1/3. And the other thing is people, I think the human body was designed to have specifically kids earlier in life, and now as people, especially with 2 career families and
Sure.
people going to college and then building a career. And a lot of people are thinking, oh, I'll start my family at 33, 35. Well, your fertility is on a steep downward trend from about 32 on.
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to see it come back as people say, oh, I can, again, as you said, oh, I can always get pregnant. I was always worried about getting pregnant back when I was in high school or college or whatever. And they think, but then as their fertility goes down, when they're ready, then maybe their body isn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting question.
I was reading too that not only natural conception chances go down after 35, but the success rate of in vitro fertilization also drops dramatically as you get older, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, your women are born with the number of eggs that they're going to have for their life. And although 50 is the new 40, 40 is the new 30, our bodies don't know that. Our bodies are born with these eggs, and as they age, they are not as viable. Their reserve can be diminished, and so we are always taught to, and I think it's wonderful that we have education and we build our, we time our families when we're ready to have them financially. But by the same token, it's a myth to think that you can delay your fertility and have a baby, easily when you're in your mid 30s and 40. That's a myth. It's going to be more difficult for you.
And does it have anything to do with the embryo? Like if you're young and you bank a bunch of embryos or sperm, does that have any effect then if you choose to try and conceive later?
Right, it does. And fertility preservation is something that's really, important to know about too on this journey. Sometimes men, they're diagnosed with some kind of form of cancer that they may have to have their ovaries removed or their uterus removed or what have you. And so if they are young and they want to have a baby, they might have to not only face that cancer diagnosis, but face, I've got to do something now with my eggs because I may not have them.
Right.
And then the other thing is women who have been diagnosed. I lead a support group in Brighton, and one of my women has diminished ovarian reserve, and she wants to have several children. Well, when they go to retrieve her eggs, she only gets one or two, and she's only 37 years old. But that's considered advanced maternal age, and so she is banking her embryos while she's still in her 30s with the hopes that maybe she'll be able to have one at 38, 39, and one again when she's 41 or something like that. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Sue Johnston and Bob Johnston are with us talking about National Infertility Awareness Week, which starts on Easter Sunday and continues next week, and the first ever Walk of Hope. Tell us about this.
Well, I should just back up a little bit and say that when I struggled with infertility, I always knew I wanted to give back because it affected me so profoundly. So when I wrote a book on my journey and the journeys of other people I met through Resolve, the National Infertility Association, I felt like I wanted to go to Washington, D.C. and advocate for those who are trying to have access to care. At that point in time, a couple of years ago, after the book was launched, I learned that Michigan was rated a D for fertility support. And that just really struck me. I was like, my home state, I have to do more than write a book. I have to be the person in the community so I can help those that are still struggling. So I started my own support group and a line of infertility support cards. And this year I decided to up my game by coordinating the very first ever infertility Walk of Hope that coincides with National Infertility Awareness Week.
And where and when is this going to be?
This is going to be on Saturday the 27th, Saturday morning, rain or shine, from 9:30 to noon at the Tolan Playfield, which is at 601 Mack Avenue in Detroit.
Okay, so Detroit a week from Saturday.
A week from tomorrow.
Week from tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
What do you find as far as medical professionals, general practitioners, and the like? How up on on infertility treatments and this problem are they?
Well, I think that I'm fortunate enough. I have 13 sponsors that came through for me. I have the University of Michigan Medicine on board. I have the National Fertility Support Center, who's coming from Grand Rapids to our Walk of Hope. I have Gago Fertility Center in Brighton, and the Reproductive Medical Associates of Troy, Michigan. All of them will be there available to answer questions.
Mhm.
They are board certified reproductive endocrinologists. Our guest speaker is Dr. Dupree from the University of Michigan, and he is a urologist and specializes in male infertility. And my husband, as he pointed out earlier, it affects both men and women. As a matter of fact, 1/3 of infertility is female related, 1/3 is male related, and 1/3 of it is a combination male, female, or unexplained infertility.
Wow.
So we have a lot of experts on board. We have some counselors, fertility coaches. We have a fertility yoga specialist. We have the Art of Infertility coming. That's co-headed by Elizabeth Walker and Maria Novotny. They have a traveling infertility museum, and they will be showing how art can be therapeutic when one is going through and facing infertility.
And you have a book.
I do have a book. I have a book. It's called Detours, Unexpected Journeys of Hope, Conceived from Infertility. And I tell my journey. My husband is a naval officer, as you may have heard. My chapter is called Never Tell a Navy Wife to Abandon Ship, because we never gave up. And my husband, he wrote a chapter too. So
Yeah, because often you don't hear the male side, whether it's the male side of infertility or whether it's just the stress it puts on the relationship. And I think most men probably are kind of like me, is you kind of want to fix it,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
but
Mhm.
you can't fix it. So it's interesting. It adds definitely a dynamic to it, to the struggle, and some relationships fall apart actually.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, but that's kind of how it is.
Well, there's a lot of support out there, as we've just
There
heard,
is.
and this walk of hope, which hopefully a lot of people will get involved with, and have a great
Right.
walk every year to raise awareness. And
right.
you can go to that website, theinfertilityadvocate.com, for more information and the particulars about the walk as well.
That
Right?
sounds wonderful. We hope you will be there. Like I said, we have a T-shirt with a Walk of Hope logo on it, and it says, "You are not alone in Michigan," because we want people to know that there are others out there that are there to support them, educate them, advocate for their access to care, and we're one community, one walk, 1 mile, and one huge difference on Saturday the 27th.
Thanks so much for your message of hope, Sue and Bob Johnston. Nice to have you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.